Jake Paul has pretty much made a career out of fighting UFC fighters, but not in the octagon, not in the UFC, in the boxing ring on his terms. And for the most part, he's been fighting some washed up, retired, older guys, but there are a lot of UFC fighters that we feel could definitely give Jake Paul problems, to say the least, if not smoke him. So let's go through the tier list of fighters who could beat Jake Paul in a boxing match, starting with Robert the Reaper Whittaker. And I'd say, ooh, this one's interesting. I'd say,
yeah, I mean,
Whittaker got good striking. I'd say it's a 50-50. He's a middleweight. He's in his, not in his prime, but he's coming out of his prime a little bit. Just got,
I'd say 50 or Jake beats, just because he's so easily hurt in some of his fights.
yeah, but I don't know. He's
Some
getting
shots like
clipped
the jab.
by the best of the best in the UFC.
That is
and
true.
I don't know. I'd say
And he's pretty
50-50 for Whittaker.
50-50 for now, yeah.
Next up, we got Michael Iron Mike, another Iron Mike, going back to back
Another
with it.
Mike.
He's too small.
Too light.
Yeah, too
Too
small.
small.
Lightweight.
Gets hurt in fights.
That's probably gonna be a recurring theme here because we got fighters of all different shapes and sizes. Some way bigger than Jake, some way smaller. So there's gonna be a lot of guys that are just outmatched. Next up, though,
Maruddin. He wanted a match against Jake Paul in the past. Now he's a bit older on a losing streak, bad knees. I'd say it's not like he has the greatest boxing in general. Probably Jake beats as of right now because he's more experienced. Fought some tougher guys.
Yeah, I mean, if this fight happened back in like 2021, then I would definitely favor Usman back when they were talking about this, when Usman was even wanting Canelo and stuff like that. But right now, I mean, he's older. He's washed up a little bit. He's on a losing streak. He has the cobblestone knee. So, yeah, I got to say Jake beats him right now. But next up, Tony Ferguson, El Kakui.
Oh, Tony. On an 8-fight losing streak. JKOs. It's as simple as that. He's too washed.
But next up, the GOAT.
Next up, John Jones. He's a heavyweight now. And come on, he's just too big for the guy. How would Jake even hurt him?
I think Jake I think he beats Jake.
It's just different when you get to that weight class. It's not like John Jones has the greatest pure boxing. He has a decent jab, some okay shots, but he's just way bigger than him, and we'll capitalize on that. Next up, a 125-pounder, one of the greatest of all time, Mighty Mouse. And come on, he's just way too
small. Does Jake
KO
him?
Maybe he'll be able to slip some of Jake's shots, be quick, so he doesn't get knocked out. Maybe out of respect, we'll say Jake beats.
I don't know, he's too small.
He's just way too small.
Next up, Nick Diaz, another guy who's just way past their prime. I'd say JKOs. I mean, he'd probably
just stop him.
He'd look rough against Robbie Lawler in his last fight. I mean, he fought his brother Nate, and I feel like Nick would do even worse in pure boxing against Jake. Next up, though, another smaller guy in Sean O'Malley, former 135-pound champ. I'd say Jake beats just because the size disadvantage.
Yeah. Again, one of the greatest of all time, George St. Pierre. Maybe back in the day it could have been even closer, but as of right now, maybe we just put him
50-50
closer to Jake beats.
Yeah.
Just because he's out of competition for a while. And again, not like his actual pure boxing was the greatest. Very good at mixing it up, very good at utilizing strikes and grappling, but against Jake Paul, who's like a similar size, it might be tougher for him.
And next up, we got Khamzat Chimaev, one of the most dominant wrestlers in the UFC right now at the 185 division. I'd say, though, pure boxing, he doesn't look that great. He went toe-to-toe with Kamaru Usman, wasn't really able to hurt him. Gilbert Burns as well, who's a lighter guy. I'd say Jake probably beats him in boxing.
Yep. And then next, Charles do Bronx, one of the best lightweights in the world, but again, that is lightweight, and this guy just gets hit so easily.
Too chinny,
in He's too chinny. I think Jake would end up catching him. Unfortunately, it'd be sad to see, just because Charles is a good striker.
And again, the size discrepancy, a former 145er.
Yeah, it would just be tough, I think, for Charles to try to survive that one.
Okay, but this one's interesting because I remember Jake saying back in the day that the one guy he wouldn't get in the ring with from the UFC is Israel Adesanya. Now here he is, the last style bender. I would say he definitely beats Jake. The question is, does he KO him? Does he counter him? Does he find a shot to put him out? I'd say we're comfortable saying he beats Jake.
I think so. I think it's safe to say that. Good striking, but I just don't see him really fully KOing Jake.
Yeah, I mean, a lifetime of kickboxing experience, even had boxing matches back in the day.
Yeah, and now Jorge Masvidal, a guy that has a lot of story with Jake Paul. At first they were friends and enemies, and maybe the fight was going to happen.
Nate Diaz in boxing too, eh?
Yeah,
So
he fought Nate Diaz.
he
And he
lost that.
lost.
Yeah.
He lost
Even
that.
after beating him in MMA. Okay, I'd say. Now you gotta say Jake beats him after that, because
Yeah.
you don't gotta do boxing math to know that Jorge's not the same guy that he once was, even though he obviously had great boxing in his prime. Let's go next up with Steven Wonderboy Thompson, another guy who's older. Another guy I'd say probably Jake beats because of just the age discrepancy. Also a smaller guy, 170er. Definitely one of the most talented strikers in the UFC, but I'd say Jake beats
Next,
him.
though, is a big boy in Stipe Miocic, of course.
Yeah.
Known by most as the best heavyweight UFC fighter of all time.
Definitely
He
beats
is
him.
older these days, but that doesn't matter to the extent with how big he is compared to Jake. And I'd say we could comfortably put him at beats Jake.
And next up we got Poatan. He definitely
Pereira.
He beats Jake. Does he KO him?
I'd say KO him
He
just
got
because of that
KO.
power he's got. Come on.
The equalizer and that left hook. He's knocked out everyone left and right in the UFC. He has that size advantage. He's bigger than Jake.
And he's even had boxing fights in the past as well.
Kickboxing
So he's all the
master.
experience too.
Yeah.
Next up, Darren Till. Interesting one. There's been a lot of talks of him maybe fighting Jake Paul now with his debut in influencer boxing.
I'd say
And
this is
it's a hard one
very
to call.
competitive.
Yeah.
Till's kind of
'cause Darren looked
underrated.
very good. Till is a little underrated.
Because he is in his prime too.
Maybe we put him slightly in beats Jake instead of 50-50. A little bit. I don't know.
He is okay. The thing is, he's a tricky southpaw. He has a good straight, good jab. I mean, out of everyone transitioning from boxing to MMA, Darren Till has probably looked the best that we've seen, especially for a guy that came out of the UFC. So, I don't know. I'd still say probably lean more towards 50-50 or kind of like in between these two.
Yeah.
But I could ride with him beating Jake. Next up, though, we got DC, former heavyweight champion Daniel Cormier, who, again, just the size advantage. He's a lot bigger. He had decent boxing back in the day. He knocked out Stipe. I'd say he beats Jake. I mean, if we're talking current DC, though, that's a different question.
Yeah. He's just really old, really big.
Older, bigger.
Out of shape. Hasn't been
training. Low key, that's 50-50 these days.
Yeah, we'll just say 50-50, I guess. Yeah. Next, Paddy Pimblett, the Scouser. I mean, I think this is pretty obvious that Jake Paul would be. He's bigger and just way better. Maybe we won't put him in JKOs because you can't knock out a Scouser. So we'll put him in Jake beats.
Yeah, and next up we got Max Bless Holloway, another guy who doesn't really get knocked out besides in his last fight against Elite Topuria. But next, but other than that, he's known for a great chin, but low-key, he is too small and he does get hit way too much for me to think that Jake wouldn't KO him.
I mean, it's hard to say Jake KOs, but you might be right.
Just the size disadvantage.
Yeah. Next, Paulo Costa. I mean, this is kind of an interesting one. I think it's kind of obvious, maybe these days, what happens. This guy...
Jake beats him.
Yeah, I just say it's comfortable to say Jake beats him.
He's not he is
an
big.
Incredible boxer. He's just kind of big.
Next up, we got Johnny Walker. This would be the goofiest boxing match of all time.
I'd pay good money to see this.
We gotta say Jake beats him.
He's huge, though. He is.
He is big. 205er. Maybe just for the but Jake. I'd say Jake beats him.
Yeah.
I mean, he is wild. He's unorthodox. Like, it's crazy. Next up, though,
Jamal Hill just lost to Yuri Prohaska. Another light heavyweight.
I'd say this one's closer.
I'd say 50-50, just because. I mean, obviously Jake is a better boxer, but I think it'd be tough for Jake to beat him just because of the size in general.
I'd say either 50-50, maybe lean towards Jake beats a little bit, maybe in between these two, but 50-50 right now. And next up, we got, remember the name, Bilal Muhammad. I think Jake beats him. He's a 170-pound champion. He has decent boxing, kind of underrated. He kind of did outbox Leon Edwards, but he has that takedown threat. You know, the wrestling. He's well-rounded, but I'd say Jake beats him.
Next is Ankalaev. I mean, usually people would say he's a Dagestani just wrestler, but this guy's more with his stand-up.
I'd say beats
and he has some decent boxing. I'd say, beats Jake Paul is probably fair. Another light heavyweight.
He's knocked out a lot of guys at 205. He has good striking. He's
horrible.
Mainly a striker.
Yeah, beats Jake Paul.
He's well-rounded enough. He's big, yeah. Next up, we got Volkanovski coming on short notice.
Short notice, he KOs Jake. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, come on, this is obvious.
Yeah. Okay, we don't need to explain that one. Let's skip it.
Yeah.
Next up, we got Khalil Roundtree, guy who just went toe to toe with Alex Pereira. But in saying that, he did kind of get smoked by Alex Pereira. So
yeah, good Muay Thai though, but
I don't know. I don't feel like he has the boxing to beat Jake.
yeah, I don't think so.
Actually, low-key, we might move Jamal Hill down.
Yeah.
Maybe Uncle Live 50-50.
Yeah.
Next up, we have
the
Yuri
Samurai
Prohaska.
Yuri Prohaska.
Wait, he just went in the Matrix against Jamal Hill. He was looking clean.
Yeah, he was doing
The
better.
pull counters.
Up this fight, head movement.
I'd
say beats Jake.
Beats him?
To be honest.
Really?
I'd say
in
maybe
boxing,
beats him.
I'd say 50-50, honestly.
Pure ball. Okay,
it's
maybe
just
you're
the
right.
style.
Maybe you're right.
It's unorthodox. It's wild. I don't know if that would work in boxing. You can't do the flying knees and the crazy spinning elbows. Like, I don't know.
It's more predictable in boxing.
Yeah, I'd say
than
50-50.
It would be for MMA. Next up, former champ Jan Blachowicz. And this is a big boy. And he has solid boxing in general.
Yeah, if not KOs him. The Polish power.
He might. The Polish power, maybe KO. We only got one in KOs right now.
No, I'd say I'd leave him in
right
now.
Yeah, I'd say that's okay.
Next
and
up,
then
we got
Shavkat Rakhmonov. Just beat Ian Gary. I mean,
Jake beats him.
His boxing is nothing spectacular, to be honest.
170 or two? No. Jake beats him. I doubt any 170er in the UFC.
And really, yeah.
Next up,
I don't think so.
Jilton Almeida, a heavyweight, a huge guy who just knocked out Sergey Spivak. He's mainly a grappler, but he showed in his last fight some decent striking, I'd say. I don't know if he beats Jake. I'd say 50-50, just because he hasn't impressed me with the striking. He got knocked out by Curtis Blades. I'd say 50-50.
Yeah, that's true. And now an interesting one we got. Tom Aspinall.
Finally.
Lightning hands. Big boy.
100% knocks Jake out. A huge heavyweight. He'd have a huge size advantage. Just everything. He has the hand speed.
Head movement, hand speed. He's got all the factors to knock out Jake Paul.
And the power. I mean, his average fight time is like, what, 3 minutes? So
yeah.
In the UFC against the best heavyweights in the world, he's going to knock out Jake Paul. There's no questions. Another knockout artist, Ilya Topuria, El Matador.
But a 145.
It's too smaller. It's too small.
As
much as I hate to say it.
I don't know, but he's got good boxing though.
He does have good
Very
boxing.
good boxing.
Okay.
He's just too small.
A 170er that I feel like actually could hang in boxing is Jack Della Maddalena. He has very good boxing in the UFC. But he's a 170 pounder. Would it translate? Is it a 50-50? Does he beat Jake?
Maybe 50-50, but
I'd say 50-50.
I don't know.
Just because
I'd say 50-50 maybe, yeah.
I mean, he is one of the best pure boxers in MMA right now.
Now another heavyweight. This one, not as much known for their power. Cyril Gane recently didn't look too good in his last fight striking-wise, even though he is typically great striker. But yeah, he beats him. I mean, he's too heavy.
And he's light on his feet. He's a good striker. He's creative. I mean, he was outpointing Francis Ngannou easily. Granted, Francis had a lot of injuries, and he was wearing knee pads in that fight. He was not normal, but I'd say Cyril Gane would be one of the better heavyweights to enter boxing. Maybe KO's Jake. We'll leave him at beats him.
And now an interesting one, kind of. You got Derek Lewis, the guy with the most KOs in UFC history.
Current form hasn't been looking crazy,
but on one hand, you could argue that he might just KO Jake Paul, big heavyweight. On the other hand, you could say he's too slow, too obvious, and maybe Jake could have a better chance.
It might just be 50-50 just because of how he's looking recently.
Just outbox him. Wait till Derek Lewis gets tired.
Yeah, another heavyweight that I feel like would struggle against Jake Paul. Tai Tuivasa, I'd say Jake beats him, honestly.
Yeah.
He's not been looking great as of recently, and hasn't really shown that one-hitter quitter as of late as much as he had when he was on that run, like 2021 run.
Yeah. But now Francis Ngannou, 100%.
Here we go.
100%. He's even translated to boxing. We've seen him knock down Tyson Fury.
Yeah.
Let's forget about the AJ fight. That didn't happen.
What AJ fight?
Exactly, what AJ fight. But against Jake Paul, come on, that's easy. Easy win. Easy KO for Francis Ngannou. That's a big boy with a lot of power.
And speaking of big boys with a lot of power, we got
Sergey
Pavlovich, another man, a Russian beast. who would come in and he would have to knock out Jake Paul. He has so many highlight reel knockouts in the UFC within a minute against high-level guys. I just don't see how these guys who are huge and have knockout power and knock out everyone they fight wouldn't come in and just give Jake Paul a lot of problems. He's never fought anyone like these guys in their prime, pretty much. I mean, Pavlovich is like, what, 31, 32? And he's one of the best heavyweights in the world, so.
Next, we have the Spider Silva. We already saw how this matchup went.
Yeah.
But that is an older Silva. I mean, if we're talking about prime Anderson Silva, we'd have to put him at Jake Paul.
Him, for sure.
But
because we already gave him a good fight at 47 years old, so prime would definitely beat him. But right now, we saw Jake beat him. So
Jake beats him.
Next up is Alexander Volkov, one of the biggest heavyweights in the game, a 6'7" giant.
Yeah.
Now he doesn't really have the most knockouts and power, but yeah, I'd say he easily
comfortably beats him. Yeah.
He's just too long, 6'7". Like imagine that picture of Jake Paul trying to get to this guy. I just don't see it. He's not outboxing him. Next up,
Tyrone Woodley.
And next up is Conor McGregor.
Conor McGregor, the most anticipated one for Jake out of anyone here, to be honest.
Yeah, one that people are actually talking about these days, about possibly happening, but it probably won't happen. But if it did happen, honestly, I feel like people are kind of counting Conor out a lot more than they should be. He's one of the best strikers of all time in MMA. Translated to boxing against Floyd Mayweather, didn't look horrible. I wouldn't say 50-50 in current form, though. I'd say
a lot older.
Right now.
Really? I'd say 50 even
I'd have to favor Jake right now. He's, 155.
Yeah, but he's bigger now these days.
Bigger and fatter and slower off the coke. And not looking good as of late. Coming off injuries, hasn't been active, hasn't been training. Jake's been disciplined in boxing. There's a million reasons as to why right now, man. If it was maybe like Logan Paul, for sure Conor McGregor beats him. But Jake, who's actually been dedicated to boxing, I'd say Jake beats him right now.
Unfortunately, sadly, yeah. Next, Islam Makhachev, who's pound for pound #1, but pure boxing is different. Yeah. Come on, he's 155.
I mean, he's well-rounded, very well-rounded, has great striking, is actually underrated defense in terms of striking, but beating Jake Paul in boxing, I just don't see it. He's too light.
And one we've seen, Nate Diaz. I mean, Jake Paul beats him. Yeah.
And Jake KO'd him. And
Curtis had a blade.
Okay, Curtis.
What do we do with this man?
I mean, he definitely beats Jake Paul. I mean,
I guess he definitely beats him.
I mean, some of these heavyweights, maybe they wouldn't beat Jake or be 50-50. Like Almeida we're putting 50-50, Lewis we're putting 50-50, DC.
Yeah.
But I mean, Blades is still active. He's still fighting. He just got knocked out by Aspinall, so maybe Jake. Maybe he's 50-50-ish. No, I'll keep him in beats.
We'll keep him in beats.
Next up, one of the best strikers in the UFC, best boxers in the UFC, Dustin Poirier, the Diamond. While he is one of the best, he's a lightweight, former featherweight. He's a lot smaller. Yeah. He has the skills. But
that's a tough
he's
one.
Either 50-50 or Jake beats him, and he's too small to be 50-50, so I say Jake beats him.
I'd say Jake beats him, yeah.
Next up is Rampage.
Rampage Jackson.
Current Rampage?
Current Rampage
gets smoked.
He gets smoked.
He's what is he, like 40?
He's probably Jake KO's him, yeah.
But right now,
Jake beats or KOs?
I say Jake beats him right now. But next up, we got Khabib Nurmagomedov now coaching.
Everyone.
Islam, pretty much everyone. Umar Nurmagomedov, Islam, Usman, everyone. So, I'd say, I mean, we all know Jake beats him.
You know how that goes.
We know Jake beats him.
He's insane chin though.
If not KOs him,
just
because it's boxing. Like, would Khabib be able to last 8 rounds? I don't know.
I think he could survive. I could see him surviving.
Yeah, I guess, and he's big these days, so
yeah.
Put on some mass. Okay, next up, Yoel Romero, who's been calling him out. This one is actually interesting.
In his prime, it would have been even more interesting, to be honest. I mean, nowadays, though, I think Jake would beat him. I think comfortable.
Right now, but he's just, I'd agree. Yeah, next up,
Lesnar. Holy.
Knocked out.
Even though he's huge and massive,
Current form.
Fine, we'll put him in chaos.
Sean Strickland. Now,
on.
One of the middleweights I feel like could definitely translate well into boxing. Another guy I'd say up there here would beats Jake Paul. I mean, obviously he doesn't KO him. He might just jab him and teep him, but won't KO him.
Beats or 50-50?
Really 50-50?
No, yeah.
No, has to be beats.
Sure. Has to be beats. Has to be beats.
I mean,
for sure.
He outboxed Izzy, one of the best pure boxers. I mean, his whole style is literally boxing and mixed with teep.
Yeah, translated.
It's literally just
I was crazy. Yeah, he's definitely
all he does is box, literally.
Yeah, exactly. He's sparring all day.
And next up is
Leon Edwards.
Rocky Edwards. A 170
not the greatest boxer.
Not the greatest boxer. Doesn't have a head kick, so you gotta say Jake beats
he's
him.
got questionable chin too, so
I don't know about that. And the last UFC champion on the list, Dricus du Plessis. I'd say in boxing, this would be the most goofy goofy boxer of all time. But I'd say Loki, his goofy style might make him 50-50 with Jake Paul. I mean, he was standing with Sean Strickland, and
that's true.
And he was
mixing it up as well.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'd say and Izzy, don't forget.
And Izzy, that's true. Maybe 50-50.
I'd say 50-50. And Robert Whittaker, he chinned him, so.
That's true.
Yeah, I'd say he has to be 50-50 if these guys are all up here. And finally,
last but not least,
the president himself, the CEO
Dana.
Of the
Dana
UFC.
knocks Jake clean out.
Dana. He almost boxed Tito Ortiz, would have knocked his head clean off. Dana White gets knocked out by Jake Paul.
Yep.
There is the final tier list of Jake Paul versus the UFC roster, or some guys that are formerly on the UFC roster, like Francis Ngannou. But this is how they match up against Jake Paul in our opinions. Let us know what you guys would change. A lot of guys here in Jake Paul beats, because especially we just got a lot of guys who are just in smaller weight classes. So that's the main reason. If we were doing pound for pound, this would probably look a lot different. But that's not what this video is about. So let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications if you guys want to see more, and check out the video on screen.